To preface, I would like to state that this entire story is true. If not for being 5 miles from cell reception, and the way the story ends, there would be a police report for verification. I will be changing names, locations, and some details in order to protect the privacy of the innocent. Anyway, a buddy of mine and I try to camp twice a month now that I have a vehicle that can be trusted to get me to some of the more remote areas of our state. We planned a camping trip for this past weekend. We chose a fairly remote location we had been to the previous weekend. The previous weekend, we were the only people we'd seen within 1 mile of our camp spot. Friday night, we got there and set up. This story takes place Saturday night. It's about 9 p.m., so the sun is long gone and the moon hasn't quite risen yet. It's pitch black out, other than what our fire lights up. Suddenly, we hear a man screaming. We listen intently, silently sharing an anxious look. At first, we were hoping it was someone drunk and having a little too much fun. But it quickly becomes obvious this isn't fun party screaming. It isn't even like he's hurt. It sounds full of despair, anger, and anguish. I'm going to take a moment to remind you that this is at 9 p.m., pitch black night, in the middle of nowhere with nothing but woods, and 5 miles from the nearest cell phone signal. We hadn't seen anyone in hours. The screaming continues for what felt like hours, but was probably about 5 solid minutes. We had no idea what to make of it, and started feeling extremely paranoid. We gathered up anything remotely close to a weapon, and tried to come up with explanations of the screaming while keeping our eyes on the forest around us. After about 15 tense minutes of fear-induced paranoia, I nearly fell out of my seat as I watched a flashlight and lantern slowly enter our camp. I greeted the stranger with a basic, "How's it going?" before he was even lit up by the fire. He responded quickly but flatly,
"Can you guys do me a favor?"
"That depends on the favor," my buddy and I said in unison, obviously tense, holding our weapons close to us. The stranger proceeded to ask,
"Can I hang out by the fire with you guys for a second?"
Given the 2 of us and 1 of him, plus our myriad of weapons gathered from around camp to within our arm's reach, we decided to agree and let him hang out. After a short second of awkward silence, I ask him what the hell is going on. He proceeds to tell me and my buddy that he was camping down the trail with his buddy, and that his buddy had snapped and tried to kill him. "Wait, what?" I said, before the thought even finished processing in my head. "Is that the screaming we heard earlier?" The man slowly nods, staring blankly into the fire, and begins his story.
"We were just hanging out, man. We came up earlier today, and my buddy just freaked out. He started screaming and just wouldn't stop. Then he attacked me. He lunged at me, and I told him to just back off and chill, you know? Well, he kept coming after me, and it started getting pretty violent, and I'm pretty sure he was going to kill me, so I grabbed my car keys, the lights, and ran. I don't know what to do, man. He chased me when I ran, and I don't know what to do. We don't have firearms or anything, but we do have a hatchet."
My buddy and I look at each other for a second, completely astonished. Then something horrible dawned on me. "Wait, he chased you? Like, he's on his way here? Right now?" The man just slowly nods in reply, and right on cue, like some terrible horror movie come to life, we hear screaming from maybe 30-40 feet from our camp, down on the main trail.
"I just want your effing balance, Gary. I want your balance, Gary. Gary, where are you? Where's Gary?"
I'd never in my life heard a man scream like this. I've never heard anything like it in my life. It was a brutal, guttural scream that was shrill to the ears yet deep in pitch. The sound of someone gone completely mad. And the way he said the stranger's name would switch erratically from long and sing-songy to short, guttural punches of sound. We killed our lights, became silent, and listened. By some miracle, the madman didn't notice our camp and continued walking down the trail, screaming the whole way. We ended up chatting with who we'll call Gary for hours, listening to the screaming getting further and further away. Come to find out, they had taken 4.5 grams of magic mushrooms each, and his buddy, who we'll call Ty, was a coworker of his and was fine for 3.5 hours, then suddenly snapped. It seemed as though Ty thought he could kill Gary and steal his good trip. We hear the screams get further and further for over 2 hours. By this time it's 11 p.m., the moon is starting to come out, and it's below 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Ty had no jacket or flashlight, according to Gary. My buddy and I are way too drunk to drive out of camp to get cell service, as it was snowy and icy and required 3 miles of highway driving after getting off the trail, and Gary was still lightly feeling the effects of weed and mushrooms, so he couldn't drive either. We had to make the decision to let the guy wander, hope he sobered up, and could find his way back. And he did. Oh, he did. Right into our camp. We hear yelling after about an hour of no screams, maybe 30 to 50 feet from camp again.
Hey, help! Please help me, I'm lost!
And we can tell the man's walking from the woods into our camp. We tell Gary to hide just in case, and greet the man with me carrying my 12-gauge shotgun and my 40 cal pistol holstered, my buddy carrying his AK-47 style rifle and his two 9mm Glocks holstered, and with our flashlights on our brightest settings in his face. He was about 6'3" inches tall and approximately 300 pounds. We talked to him, decided he was calm enough to walk with, and we walked him back to his camp. He seemed really remorseful, said he blacked out and didn't remember anything, and had a falling out with his buddy. We escorted him back to his camp down the trail, returned and told Gary that Ty seemed cool, and if anything else happened to scream and come running, we would come out and help him. It ended up being a happy ending. We made friends with Gary, and I got his phone number to make sure the next day he got back into town safely, back to his wife and kid, and we're actually planning a camping trip with him soon. But Ty, who wandered screaming like a deranged maniac into the forest, potentially wielding a hatchet to murder your friend to steal his good trip, or whatever it is your psychosis-filled mind was thinking, for the love of God, let's not meet again. A few weeks ago, I, 23 female, and a friend about the same age, planned to go to an event together. Since we only had free time after work, we decided to get an Uber so we could go straight there. The first half of the ride was really normal. The driver seemed like a normal, polite dude. But as soon as we got to the highway, his attitude changed. He seemed a lot more irritated. My friend and I didn't pay much attention, though, and kept chatting between ourselves. Our attention was drawn when he started shouting with another driver. He turned to us and said he was going to pull over. I tried objecting, but he ignored and pulled over anyway. He reached for the glove compartment and pulled out a gun. It's important to note that guns are illegal in my country. We were just watching this unfold while holding our breaths, and when the other guy drove away, we let out a sigh of relief. But then, we were still stuck in a car with a crazy man with a gun. After that, he went back to driving and apologized to us, saying that the guy was tailgating him. I let out an "oh, got it." He then says,
"That guy is lucky that you two girls are here, or else I would have followed him and shot him in the face. Sleazy idiot."
I look over at my friend. She's in shock and paralyzed. I'm in shock too, but trying to keep my cool because the last thing I want is to get him annoyed at us. If he was willing to shoot that guy for tailgating, I didn't want to know what he would do to us if I said the wrong thing. "No, it's okay, I understand," I say, trying to appease him.
"These guys need to be taught a lesson."
He continued while I just agreed by nodding my head.
"I did that before, you just trap the guy in an empty street and when he leaves the car, bang!"
Did he just admit to murder? Was the only thing running through my mind. But I managed to keep calm and just agreed with him the rest of the way. He did drop us off at the right place with no further incidents. I waited a few weeks to report, since he had my home address, and it wouldn't be hard to figure out who reported him. Nobody showed up in my home with a gun, at least up until now, and Uber has answered my report saying that they started an investigation. Hope this guy doesn't do this to anyone else. This experience has bothered me for a long time, and I wanted to just get it off my chest. This happened June 2018 in Portland, Oregon. I understand I acted like an idiot in this situation. Since then, I have become much more observant, cautious, and honestly, much more paranoid. I went dancing with friends and was really drunk by midnight. Unfortunately, this was back when I had little money, and I realized you could save money by eating very little before going out, and it would take far fewer drinks to get drunk. So I was so drunk I barely remember my friend ordering me an Uber home, since my phone was dead, of course. I can vaguely recall them helping me into the car and telling me to get home safe. I don't remember greeting the driver or the first minute or so, but soon after getting in, he asked how my night was and if I smoked. Honestly, I was just thinking about bed at this point, so I sort of just slurred out that I did sometimes. He then offered me a joint, and this is the first moment I get sort of nervous and begin paying attention. I tell him something like, I'm really tired and just ready to get home. I think he said something about it being an indica-based joint and it made for great sleep. Once again, I say something not exactly like no, but not a yes, which he takes as a, yes, I'll take that joint now. Once again, I'm still drunk enough I can barely see straight or speak clearly, so when he says,
Okay, well, I have to cancel the ride real quick because I can't give it to you while I'm on the clock.
or something to that effect, it takes me a second to realize how dangerous that is, and by the time I start to say something, he has canceled the ride and pulls over. We were in an area just east of the Hawthorne Bridge, I think, and it was totally secluded. Some empty parking lots, a closed auto shop, and no one in sight. It's starting to hit me I'm now in the car, not with an Uber driver, but with some random stranger. I can't call anyone, and he's trying to give me weed that could have anything in it. For the next minute or so, we're pretty quiet. Or I just can't remember any small talk he tried to make because I was beginning into panic. And every time he handed me the joint, I would take fake hits, just breathing it into my mouth and not into my lungs. I felt tired, clumsy, and weak. That kind of drunk where you're almost at the point of nausea. And I knew I couldn't do much of anything to defend myself at that point. I remember vividly being fixated for a moment on the fact I didn't even have a pair of keys to defend myself with, as my building used fobs for just about everything, and I didn't take my mail key with me. As I'm freaking out, I look up to see if this guy is sort of noticing, and I make eye contact with him in the mirror. He was staring at me, but I couldn't read his expression. Finally, he says something along the lines of,
Well, let's get out here.
I tell him I'll just call another Uber to get home, thinking at this point it might even be safer to walk, and he says,
No, I still have your address, I'll just take you home.
For a moment, I was relieved. I guess I wanted to believe him so badly that I would get home safe. I believed him. I tried to calm myself down, thinking he hadn't actually done anything threatening. Maybe he was just your typical stoner guy, and I'm overreacting. At this time, I lived on campus in downtown Portland in the southwest area of the city. He is driving me north on the east side of the river. There are several bridges to our left, and as he keeps moving north, he has several opportunities to take an exit to hop over the river and get me back downtown. He keeps skipping them. We keep passing bridge after bridge that could get me home. Up in northeast Portland, there are some large industrial areas that can get very isolated at night, and Portland in general is surrounded by lots of forests, so I knew he could have me in a secluded area really quickly. After he passes like the fourth exit for a bridge, pretty sure it was the Broadway Bridge, I've been racking my brain for a way to make him actually take me home, and say something to the effect of, Hey, my boyfriend is waiting for me at home. Which was true, though I said it in a very meek way. My driver says nothing, but he did take the next exit for a bridge and basically hung a giant U-turn that started taking me home. Even as we're on the west side of town heading south, I'm still shaking and have my hand on the door handle, thinking about just hopping out at a red light the closer we get to my apartment. My phone is completely dead, and he honestly still has several chances to hop onto nearby highways and speed out of the city. We're getting pretty close to my apartment now, and I'm once again trying to convince myself I'm being paranoid about some stoner that can't navigate the city, although a few minutes before I was so scared I was crying. So once we get about 2 blocks from my apartment, I lie and tell him it's easiest to stop here and he can let me out. Again, he doesn't say anything, but does slow the car. I'm flooded with relief and even feel myself smile. But when I go to open the door, it's locked. I try to lift the lock mechanism manually, but it won't budge. I look up at him instinctually to see what's up, and he's got his head turned almost fully toward me. Shoulders still facing the road, smiling at me. The worst effing smile I've ever seen. It looked so mocking, and it just did not reach his eyes at all. I just started crying and asking him to open the door. I was so freaked out and still very drunk, and thank God he did. I will never forget the sensation of vulnerability. Not just being drunk in his car with no way to contact anyone, but even as I got out of the car, I kept feeling like he would somehow grab the back of my shirt and pull me back in, as silly as that sounds. When I got home, I found out my boyfriend had actually gone out with friends last minute, and wasn't even home, so he wouldn't even have known till much later if I hadn't gotten back safe. The next day, I convinced myself I was freaking out over nothing. which I realized still could be the case. But in my gut, I had truly felt in danger the night before. Technically, this guy could have been totally harmless, but I still think I should have texted my friend and had her report him. The big thing that made me think of this was recently hearing about how Ed Kemper, nicknamed the co-ed killer, would go for practice runs, picking up hitchhikers and seeing if he could get the potential victims to trust him or how far out of their comfort zone he could push them without them saying anything. Obviously, this guy wasn't Ed Kemper, but I hate wondering if that night was a practice run of sorts for my Uber driver.
Don't skip this.